So hello, good evening, and I wanted to expand on the previous video about ancient history and ancient China, because after studying a little bit about it, I found out that it might be a very good way to understand why the world is the way it is. It's a specific culture with many factors that really help us to see why the world ended up being as it is today. And before diving into that and speaking a little bit about the Shi and the Shang, again, the four main social classes, and particularly these two, I wanted to make mention to Nicholas Machiavelli at the beginning, and the idea of private property and not stealing from people. And Machiavelli, one of his most famous quotes was, "If you can't choose to be loved, you better choose to be feared," right? It's better to have both in your life, being feared and being loved. But if you cannot be loved, if you cannot be appreciated because of all the hard work you put to be where you are, it's better to be feared. In the sense that people have to know that if they steal from you, they're gonna have serious consequences. And in some way, ancient history in ancient China, it was the history of the Shi who lived from theft, from taxes, from many sources of income. And then you had the Shang, which accumulated wealth through the means of good decisions and good transactions and so on. And of course, they had a mentality that was more liberal, more respectful of private property. They liked to move out to countries like the United States of America, where you're less theft, less socialism, less communism. And the important thing I want to say before starting is this logical statement, which is very important. Because when you have nations of poor people, where 90% of the population is poor people, in that environment, everybody's socialist, everybody's communist, everybody is supporting theft. But then human beings are very hypocrite, because most of them, as soon as they accumulate $1 million, $2 million in savings, everybody becomes liberal. Everybody becomes pro-private property. Everybody starts fearing losing what they accumulated. They don't want to be stolen. They don't want their goods to be stolen and given to other people without them wanting to give them away, right? And this is very important, because the logical statement is, and this is the logical statement, if I allow the government or whatever person to steal from another person, for whatever reason, if it's to give it to the poor, if it's to give it to the schools, if it's to give it to whatever, if I allow people to steal from other people, that means that automatically my own private property is invalid. It's not like I have the right of not being stolen, but then you can steal from that guy. As happened, for example, with Jewish people. Jewish people, it was allowed to steal from them. With the other minorities, they lived in a situation where you could enslave them, where you could steal from them, where you could do so many things to them. But then for other people, the rights were different.
These are my boys. This here's my land, and I want you the hell off it.
Mr. Lown, this land here is his rightful burial place.
Natives ain't got no rights.
President's orders.
There ain't no writing on no paper, president or not, can tell me what I can and can't do on my property. Get your shit, you dead Cheyenne, and get the hell out of here. This is my land. You just ain't hearing me.
You just ain't hearing me.
Now, goddammit! Something tells me you ain't got the nerve to fire that woman.
The logical statement is, before starting, if I allow the government or whatever person to steal from other people, that means the other ones can steal from me. And there's no problem. And I want you to agree with that before starting, because Machiavelli said, if you're a shank, if you're wealthy, if you had accumulated wealth, and I don't worry about this because myself I started from very humble beginnings, so this doesn't affect me. But this is a message for people that might have accumulated much more than what I had accumulated, which is, if they steal from you, it's better to be feared. Believe me, because they are not loving you, they are not appreciating you, they're not appreciating all the work that it took to accumulate that. So you better let them know that in the same way they steal from you, they better hide under a rock, because you're going to use your power to find them and steal from them, and not steal from them because you're not going to need it, but take all the goods from them and give it to the poor like they want to do it. And everybody gets what they deserve. If you go out there and you say that stealing is legal, that stealing is fine, okay, so it's legal to steal from you and give it to the poor, right? Okay, so that's the first logical statement. If I allow others to steal, that means if somebody steals from me, I shouldn't complain, okay? So America is one of the pillars is that theft doesn't happen here. We have a legal system, okay? And taxes are lower. So in some way you get stolen from the state, from the government, but in less measure than in other places of the world. So going back to China, one of the countries with the highest taxes in the world. So in ancient China, you have the Shi, the government, okay, which also was the army and the scholars, like Confucius, like many intellectuals, writers, but were people that didn't have an income from good decisions. They have an income from the government that paid them, from the emperor, from sometimes they had private schools, or they were prominent philosophers like Confucius, so he had payments from people. But many of them lived from the government, from the taxes, from seducing the emperor. They lived from that type of transactions. And they were in the government. And the government, back in those days, they were one with the police. The police and the government was one. The government, when enemies invaded from other nations, they defended their nation, and they like to proclaim themselves as selected by God, or great people that saved China or saved this country, because they defended the country. And they held armies, and they had a monopoly on violence. And then in the same way they used that army to defend you, they used that army to go and grab taxes from you. Not only from the Shang, from the richest one, but also from the Nong, the Gong, the artisans, the farmers. Everybody was taxed. And the same army that defended you, that came from the Shi class, was the one that was going to steal from you later on with taxes. And the very interesting thing I wanted to share in this video is that this structure happened in times where we didn't have democracy. Now we have the Democratic Republic of China. They are a democracy. They are not, because they only have one party, the Communist Party. They still have a little bit of faction there. And the interesting thing is that the Shang, and the message of this video is, if you can, become a Shang, become an investor, become independent. Don't make your income from stealing from others, from relying on the government or wherever. The Shang made their money from good decisions, from commerce. The Shi from taxes, from conquering other countries, from violence, from finding an enemy. I don't know, Japan is our enemy, so we're gonna send the army to defeat them and steal all the money, and then that money goes to the emperor, and they live from that, and they eat like pigs, and they live in luxury and palace, and many times these are paid by taxes. But the thing is that back in those days, you didn't have democracy. So it's quite natural that the government wasn't as socialist as it is today. It wasn't. Why? Because they didn't need to. They just waged war, steal with taxes, and they made income from that. But then when the democracy came in, you have to convince people to vote you, so then you can have access to that pool of money and live like a pig and live so happy and so rich while working in government instead of working in commerce or investing or whatever, just being smart. And the thing is, you have to convince people to vote you. And that's when communism, when demagogy, when socialism appears, because still today, 80% of the population live within these discriminated classes, the Nong, the Gong, farmers, artisans. They don't invest wisely still. They don't take great decisions. They are still going into that, but they still are not there. So to convince them to vote you and to give you the power, you have to sell them that they are a victim, that you are going to help them, that you are going to make everything better for them, which in other words means we're going to steal from people to give it to other people. In my government, the Shang are not going to pay 30% taxes, they're going to pay 60% taxes. And you sell to the Nong and to the Gong that they are victims and that they deserve retribution and that they are just poor people that need the help of the government. So then that's how you conquer power. You convince them and you get them into communism, into theft, into wealth redistribution, which also means that there's no freedom. That's why myself, I came to the US. That's why many people came to the US, because here they had freedom of speech. They have freedom to keep more of their money. They still were going to be taxed, but they weren't going to be taxed a lot. And the communism, the world of communism and socialism, the same in Norway, in these countries where you see that people pay 60% in taxes, is insane. Yes, the government gives you schools, the Shi that were the scholars, yes, they give you access to schools, very, very bad quality schools. They don't teach you how to be a Shang. It's like stupid schools that teach you trades. So you're still middle class and dependent on them. Okay, so yes, they give you all of that, but 60% tax rate. You have less money to invest. You have less money to save. You have less money to take good decisions. Okay, but that's the thing. They want to convince you that you are a victim. And that's how the game started, when democracy came into China. And this Shi class, many times were very humble people that studied a lot and become scholars, and then they worked in government. It's true that, but nowadays you have universities in China where very humble people reach government positions. But the game is seducing people, lying to them, so they give you the power. They give you access to funding. They give you the power to raise taxes and make more money, so you can raise the salaries of the CCP, the Communist Party officials, and the president, and all that people makes more money, okay, with the excuse that they're going to help others. Okay, but that's how China, changed. Before democracy, the Shi were more liberal. Sometimes you have the Shang, the commercial class, that were very wealthy. They became sometimes government officials because they wanted to help China to be a country with less theft and with less, violence. They wanted to help, the police, which was part of the government, to keep all the trading routes safe, to keep all the country safe, and to make a country where you could make business and get rich without issues, without being stolen, if it's not from the government, from vandals and criminals and raiders and things like that. But they also tried to make politics so the government didn't charge excessive taxes on commercial people that were very successful in certain provinces and all of that, right? But in those times, the government was more liberal, but also was more powerful. Nowadays, the police is not in the Shi class. is like a different class, which is less powerful, but still they have nice wages, but they are separated from the government. And I think that's an improvement. But in China, it's not the case. Now these videos on YouTube is in America. I can come here and say fuck you Communist Party, go to fucking hell, fucking communist, and no, I'm not gonna be canceled. I'm not gonna be threatened by the Chinese government. If you're Chinese and watching this, try to do this in TikTok, in a Chinese platform, and see if they don't ban you or you don't get a threat from the government. That's gonna tell you that you can criticize them, but you have to be nice and say it in a way that's like positive, telling them what they should change. Which in other words means there's no freedom and we have the power. We're the sheep class. You know, this still exists in China. And many Shang people from China left the country. And they live in the United States, or they live in freer countries where they are much wealthy, and then they don't have the CCP stealing from them. But you know, this is very interesting. China before democracy and then China after democracy. And how the Shi class still exists, however, is different. They have to seduce the lower, I don't like to call it lower class. I like to call it people that's struggling and need to, you know, improve their lives. And they want to seduce them to get their vote so they can be the Shi class and stay there. And in the case of China, they had succeeded on that lie. They had succeeded. The Shi class still exists. It's called the Communist Party, the CCP. They've been in government for decades. And they never, there's never a different government. So the last thing, and I repeat it before finishing the video, you know, use this logical statement. If I allow others to steal, if I allow others to put me a 70% tax rate on me, and I allow them to steal from me, that means it's allowed to steal from them. Of course, I'm not going to steal from them, because if I have a 70% tax rate on me, I don't need their money. Why I will steal from them? But the thing is that tell them to better hide it under a rock, because perhaps in the future there's going to be a group, some people that's going to find them, and in the same way they steal from others, they're going to be stolen, and their things will be given to the poor, to the working class, to the whatever, all this speech the communists have that we want to give to the weaker, right? Yes, you make them weaker, because you don't help them to take good decisions. You help them to keep yourself in power and educate them about how to be a nong or how to be a gong, an artisan, and stay there, winning less income, not diversifying, not buying the businesses of other people with the stock markets. You know, you educate them how to be poor and how to keep you in power. And you, the sheep, probably you don't know how to invest in the stock market because you're very stupid too. So you want to stay in power and make a lot of money stealing with taxes. You know, and glorifying yourself. That's the Communist Party in China. And it's very interesting, you know. This is ancient history. You should study the 4 main classes in China. And now, of course, it's a little bit different, but it's very interesting how everything developed from there. It's a very interesting thing. The Shi class, the Nong class, the Gong class, and the Shang, the most wealthy, and I won't say the most powerful because they didn't have the army, but very powerful people that took good decisions. So thank you for watching, and that's the expansion of the previous video. You know, the previous video was very interesting about ancient China and all that, and yeah. Remember to check some of my publications. This is one of my books. This book is a lot about how to be a Shang in some way, how to take better decisions in your life. So you don't end up being a communist, you don't end up being this or this. You have the power the free will to take better decisions and be free. Okay? So thank you and goodbye.
The first public notice that was ever made of Shakespeare was from a grub street writer, Robert Greene, who called him an upstart crow, beautified with our feathers. In the book, under that title on the board.
Is the beautified feathers thing because Greene knew that Shakespeare was the Earl of Oxford?
Absolutely not. Not even close. The Earl of Oxford published poetry, okay? And it wasn't any good. I mean, had Oxford been able to get a play put on, he would have broken a leg to do it. I mean, can you think of any human being that would, for any reason, not put his name on Hamlet? The Oxfordian thing, the anti-Stratfordian thing. What pisses people off about Shakespeare, what lies behind every controversy about Shakespeare, is rage. Rage over the nature and unequal distribution of talent. Rage that genius appears where it appears, for no material reason at all. Desiring a thing cannot make you have it. Now, the trouble with writing, if I may bring it up here in the English department, is we all do a little of it from time to time. Writing. And some of us start to think delusionally, maybe with a little time, a little peace, a little money in the bank, you get that room of your own, you think, well, shit, I might be a writer too. I mean, we accept genius in sports as something we cannot do, but it's no more likely that you could be a writer, that you could be, what, an Olympic pole vaulter? Because what you have to be before you try to be a pole vaulter, hello, is a pole vaulter, no? Yeah.
You are one.
A pole vaulter?
A novelist.
No, I am not. For me to be a novelist, I would have to make a deal with myself that it was okay being a mediocrity in a profession that died commercially in the last century. All right, people do that. I am not one of them. If you take away nothing else from my class, from this experience, let it be this. If you're not a genius, don't bother. All right? The world needs plenty of electricians, and a lot of them are happy. I'll be fucked if I'll be a mid-list novelist getting good reviews from the people I give good reviews to. Let's have a look at Dexter. Dexter! An ordinary-looking young man with a what? Size 40 jacket, regular features, and decent dentition, is a second-ranked collegiate tennis player in the United States of America. How'd that come about, Dexter? You come from a tennis family?
I mean, I started playing 5 years ago in high school because the tennis guys have the best weed.
After you started tennis, how long was it before you were better than everybody?
Before I was better than everybody or before I knew it?
What happened when you noticed you were naturally better than everybody?
I got interested in the game.
That is an IQ breakpoint, brother. Right there. Do you remember Machiavelli? That would have been in September.
I can remember September.
All right. Is it the game, brother? Or the money? Huh? Where to a fama? Fame or virtue? What are you after? Don't go modest on me. What do you want?
Both.
You got ambitious, yeah?
I realized as I learned about the game that I was in reach of...
In reach of?
In reach of...
Highest level?
Highest level, yeah.
Highest level. But it's still a gamble, isn't it? Look, I'm a literature teacher. I can't write well enough to bother, or I just don't bother. Whichever. Whichever it is, there'll be no apotheosis around here. There'll be no I puto deus fio around here. That's what the Emperor Vespasian said on his deathbed. Dear me, I think I'm becoming a god. But do you know who does write at the highest level? When most of us, and even I, write barely adequately. Do you know who it is? In this room. Who is it? Don't give me that look. No. it isn't the one who talks the most. You're an NPR host tops, okay? The literary person in here is Miss Phillips. She's the least obstreperous in this room, the quietest, and the only one who can have a real career at letters. Some of you can have one perceptually. Only she can have one in reality. She is better at writing than our U.S. Presidently amateur number 2 is at tennis. Yet she chooses to hide or just blend in with the rest of you. Why? Why is that, Miss Phillips?
Being in the middle is the safest place to be.
Where do you come from?
Ohio?
Ohio. Parents as geniuses by any chance? Filthy rich?
No.
Well, your dad wasn't the Earl of Oxford, was he?
No.
No? How old were you when you read?
I was 2.
2? Well, that's early. That's prodigious. Any advantages, literary home life? Who's your father?
Well, he worked in a factory.
Well, and your mother? What?
She was an alcoholic. She was insane.
But wasn't your dad?
I don't see how this is pertinent.
No money, no advantages, no peer of the realm. You're not the Earl of Oxford, are you? No? No, why are you better than the rest of us? No, you look at me. You are better than the rest of us. If no one's told you yet you're a genius and an artist, let me be the first.
Okay, I don't know if you can say that. Because I think it's subjective, man. I mean, we all have something to offer.
Bullshit. Genius is magical, not material. If you don't have the magic, no amount of wishing will make it so. Miss Phillips, if you plan to continue to come to my class, you sit in the front where you belong, but don't bother showing up. Have a nice day.